All right, hey everyone, and welcome back to Too Lazy to Read. We're doing a deep dive today
Oh, excellent.
into Ultra Learning, Master Hard Skills, Outsmart the Competition, and Accelerate Your Career by Scott Young.
Great choice.
Have you heard of this one?
I have, yeah. Really interesting.
Yeah, it really is. And I think it's super relevant for, I think anybody really, but I think especially for our listeners who are, kind of younger and looking to improve themselves. Right?
Absolutely, yeah.
So ultra learning is this idea that you can kind of take learning into your own hands and do it in this really intense way and learn things way faster and way better than you could through traditional methods, which I think is super appealing.
Yeah, for sure. And I think one of the things that Young does really well in this book is he doesn't just talk about the theory of ultra learning. He actually gives you these really compelling examples of people who have used it to do some pretty amazing things.
Oh, yeah. Some of the stories are crazy.
Yeah, I mean, there's the guy who learned MIT's entire 4-year computer science curriculum in just 1 year, all from his bedroom.
The MIT challenge.
Yeah, the MIT challenge, exactly.
So no lectures, no exams, none of that. It was just pure self-driven learning.
Yeah, it's just him and the internet, basically. And he actually, he didn't just learn the materials superficially. He actually performed really well in the final exams.
Yeah. So it's not just about speed either, right?
Right.
It's actually about that depth of understanding.
Exactly, yeah.
There's also the story of Eric Barone, who, he was kind of struggling to make ends meet, I think working, minimum wage jobs. And then he ended up creating this smash hit indie game called Stardew Valley. Have you heard of that?
Oh, yeah, big fan.
Yeah, so this game, he made millions of dollars from it.
Wow.
But he basically taught himself everything about game design, from programming to pixel art to music composition, like the whole thing.
That's
Yeah. So, I mean, it kind of proves that you don't need some fancy degree or background to achieve incredible things if you're willing to put in the work and use the right approach.
And I think Baron's story is a really great example of that ultra learning principle of breaking down a seemingly impossible goal into smaller, more manageable steps.
Right.
So, he didn't just set out to create Stardew Valley from day one. He focused on mastering individual skills one by one. And eventually all those skills came together to create this incredible game.
Yeah. So I think that's a really, important takeaway for our listeners. If they're feeling overwhelmed by a big learning goal, just break it down, take it one step at a time.
For sure.
Okay. So we've seen some pretty mind-blowing examples of ultra learning in action, but what is it exactly?
Right.
Like what makes it different from just, regular learning?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's not just about being super disciplined or having, a photographic memory or anything like that. It's really about a strategic and focused approach to learning. And Young breaks it down into 3 core elements: aggressiveness, self-direction, and the use of effective methods.
Okay. So aggressiveness, what does he mean by that?
So when Young talks about aggressiveness, he's talking about that intensity and the willingness to push yourself beyond your comfort zone.
So it's not just about, passively kind of sitting back and absorbing information.
Right, exactly. It's about actively seeking out information, challenging yourself, and really kind of embracing that discomfort that often comes with intense learning.
Right. I could see how that would be important. Okay, and then what about self-direction? What does that mean?
So ultra learners are in the driver's seat of their learning journey. They're not relying on, traditional institutions or structured courses to guide them. They decide what they want to learn, how they want to learn it, and at what pace.
Right, which makes a lot of sense, especially these days when there's so much information available online, right? Like we really do have the power to kind of curate our own learning experiences and tailor them to our own, specific needs and goals.
Exactly, yeah. You're not limited by, a curriculum or a professor's syllabus.
Right, okay. And then the last one, effective methods. What's that all about?
So ultra learners are always looking for the best ways to learn and retain information. So they're constantly researching, experimenting, and refining their methods to find what works best for them.
So it's not just about working hard, it's about working smart.
Exactly, yeah. It's about combining that focused effort with effective strategies.
Right. Okay, so we've got this kind of overview of what ultra learning is. So let's kind of dig into the 9 principles that Young outlines in the book. So the first one is meta learning.
Okay.
Which, sounds a little intimidating, maybe.
It does, yeah. But it's actually quite simple. So meta learning is basically learning how to learn.
Okay.
So it's about taking the time to research and understand the most effective ways to approach a particular learning goal before you actually dive in.
So instead of just, jumping into a new online course or picking up a textbook, we should kind of step back and think about like how should I actually be approaching this?
Exactly, yeah. It's about asking yourself questions like, what are the most effective resources for this topic? What are the common pitfalls that beginners often encounter? What are the different approaches that other people have taken to master this skill?
It's like drawing a map before you set off on a journey.
Exactly. You
Right.
want to make sure that you're heading in the right direction.
Right, and that you have the right tools and resources to get there. Okay, so meta learning is basically like laying the groundwork.
Exactly.
Okay, and then the next principle is focus.
Yeah. Which, might seem pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
But it's actually more challenging than ever in today's world.
Yeah, because we have so many distractions, right?
Yeah.
Like our phones and social media and just like, the internet in general.
Exactly, yeah. Our attention spans are constantly being bombarded.
Yeah, they're under attack.
Yeah.
Okay, so how do we combat that?
So Young emphasizes the importance of creating a distraction-free learning environment. So this might involve turning off your phone, closing unnecessary tabs on your computer, or finding a quiet space where you can really concentrate.
Yeah, so you're saying we basically need to create this kind of like mental sanctuary where we can fully immerse ourselves in whatever it is we're trying to learn.
Exactly. You want to minimize those external distractions as much as possible.
Right.
But it's not just about external distractions.
Oh, okay.
It's also about internal distractions, right? Like our own thoughts and worries and those things that are constantly kind of buzzing around in our heads.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My mind is like a chattering monkey sometimes.
Yeah, that's a great analogy.
It's just, jumping from one thought to the next.
And so Jung suggests techniques like mindfulness and meditation to help kind of calm that mental chatter and improve our ability to focus.
Right. Okay. So it's about being mindful of our environment, both external and internal.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. And then the third principle is directness.
Right.
So we've laid the groundwork with meta learning. We've created this focused environment.
Yep.
Now, what's directness all about?
So directness is about actively engaging with the skill that you want to master rather than just passively learning about it.
Right.
So it's about getting your hands dirty, making mistakes, and learning from experience.
So instead of just, reading about coding, I should actually be like writing code.
Exactly.
Right.
Or if you want to learn a new language,
Yeah.
Start speaking it from day one, even if you only know a few words.
Right.
It's like the difference between reading about swimming and actually jumping in the pool.
Yeah. You got it. You got to just dive in.
Yeah, you got to get in the water.
Right.
And Jung argues that this direct practice is the most effective way to develop mastery and to turn knowledge into a tangible skill.
Right. So you're not just like, learning about it theoretically. You're actually like doing the thing.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right. This kind of reminds me of a story I read about Benjamin Franklin's approach to improving his writing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he would take these essays from great writers that he admired, and he would try to basically recreate them from memory.
Okay.
And then he would compare his version to the original and identify his weaknesses and just keep honing his skills through that direct practice.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a great example of directness in action.
Yeah, and he wasn't just passively reading. He was really like actively engaging with the craft of writing.
For sure.
So it's not just about, putting in the hours. It's about making sure that those hours are spent engaging directly with the skill that you want to master.
Right. It's about quality practice, not just quantity. Okay, so we've got meta learning, we've got focus, we've got directness. The next principle is drilling,
Okay.
which might sound a little intense.
Yeah, it does sound a little intense. What exactly is drilling?
So drilling is about targeted practice. It's
Yeah.
about focusing on specific aspects of a skill that need improvement.
Right.
And really kind of breaking down a complex skill into smaller components. And then you practice those components deliberately and repeatedly.
So instead of trying to learn everything at once, you're saying we should kind of isolate like specific weaknesses.
Exactly.
Okay. And how do we know like what to focus on? Like how do we identify those weak spots?
That's where meta learning comes in again.
Oh,
So it's about researching the skill, understanding the key components, and then identifying those areas that are most crucial for overall performance.
right. Okay.
You can also get feedback from experts or mentors to help kind of pinpoint those areas for improvement.
Okay, so drilling is all about being strategic with your practice, right? Like
Yeah.
really targeting those areas that need the most work.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So we've put in the focus, we've drilled those key skills. Now, how do we make sure that knowledge actually sticks?
Right. And that brings us to the fifth principle, retrieval.
Okay.
And retrieval is all about the power of testing yourself.
Okay.
So it's about actively trying to recall information from memory rather than passively reviewing or rereading your notes.
So instead of just highlighting passages in a textbook, you're saying we should actually like quiz ourselves on the material.
Exactly,
Yeah.
yeah. And the research shows that this retrieval practice is far more effective for long-term retention than simply reviewing or rereading.
Okay, and why? Why is that?
So it's kind of like working a muscle.
Mm.
You know, the more you use it, the stronger it gets. And when you force yourself to recall information from memory, you're basically strengthening those neural connections associated with that knowledge.
So you're making it more likely to stick.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay. I use this technique when I'm learning languages. I'll write down new vocabulary words on flashcards, and then I'll just like quiz myself regularly. And it's amazing how much more I retain when I do that.
That's a great example of retrieval practice in action.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So we've covered meta learning, focus, directness, drilling, and retrieval. What's next?
Okay, so the sixth principle is feedback.
Hmm.
And this is all about getting input on your progress and identifying areas for improvement.
Yeah, feedback is so important. But how do we ensure that we're getting quality feedback, a feedback that's actually helpful?
That's a great question. So Young emphasizes the importance of seeking out feedback from multiple sources. So this could include teachers, mentors, peers, and even self-assessment.
Right.
And he also distinguishes between different types of feedback.
Okay, so what are the different types and which ones are the most useful?
So the least helpful type is outcome feedback,
Okay.
which basically just tells you whether you succeeded or failed. So it's like getting a grade on a test without knowing which questions you got wrong.
Right. So it might tell you how you did, but it doesn't really tell you how to improve.
Exactly. Yeah. Then there's informational feedback, which tells you what you're doing wrong, but it doesn't necessarily tell you how to fix it.
Okay. So you know you're doing something wrong, but you don't know how to correct it.
Right.
Okay.
And then the most valuable type of feedback is corrective feedback.
Okay.
And this type of feedback not only identifies your mistakes, but it also provides specific guidance on how to improve.
Okay. So it's like having a coach who can, point out your flaws and then show you the correct technique.
Exactly.
Okay. So it's not just about seeking out any feedback. It's about seeking out the right kind of feedback.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's also about developing a mindset that embraces feedback.
Right. Which I think can be hard. Like nobody likes to be criticized.
Of course. Yeah.
But if we want to improve, we have to be open to hearing, how we can do better.
Absolutely. Yeah. Ultralearners view feedback as a gift. It's an opportunity to identify those blind spots and to accelerate their learning.
Right. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground today. We've explored 6 of Young's 9 principles of ultralearning. Meta learning, focus, directness, drilling, retrieval, and feedback.
And I think we've seen how these principles can be applied to a lot of different learning goals, from mastering a new language to developing a technical skill to pursuing a creative passion.
Yeah, and I think the main takeaway so far is that, ultralearning is not just about working hard, it's about working smart.
Right.
It's about being strategic, focused, and persistent in our pursuit of knowledge.
Exactly, yeah. It's about taking ownership of our learning journey, embracing challenges, and really committing to that continuous growth.
Right.
So we've already explored 6 of Scott Young's 9 principles of ultralearning: meta learning, focus, directness, drilling, retrieval, and feedback.
Right.
Now let's dive into the final 3 principles: retention, intuition, and experimentation.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, these next principles feel like they get to the heart of how we make knowledge really stick, and how we can become more intuitive learners.
Absolutely.
So I'm excited to explore these.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Let's start with retention.
Okay.
So Young kicks off this chapter by highlighting Nigel Richards,
Oh, yeah.
the Scrabble grandmaster,
He's amazing.
who's memorized the entire official Scrabble dictionary, not just in English,
Wow.
but also in French and German.
That's insane.
It's incredible, right?
Yeah, it makes you wonder, like, are ultra learners just wired differently?
Right.
Do they have, like, some kind of superpower memory that the rest of us lack?
It's a good question, and Young actually addresses that. He dives into the science of forgetting and explains that our memories are actually quite fragile. We forget things for a variety of reasons. Sometimes the memories simply fade over time.
Right.
Sometimes they get jumbled up with other information. And sometimes we just can't access them because we've lost the cues that trigger them.
All right. Oh, that makes sense. Okay, so how do we combat this forgetfulness, and make our hard-won knowledge stick?
Right. So Young outlines 4 key mechanisms for improving retention spacing, proceduralization, overlearning, and mnemonics.
Okay, let's break those down.
All right. So spacing is all about reviewing information at strategic intervals.
Okay.
It's much more effective than cramming everything in at once.
Right.
Think of it like watering a plant. You wouldn't drown it with a whole bucket of water at once.
Yeah.
Give it a little bit each day to allow it to absorb the moisture and thrive.
That's a great analogy. So instead of cramming for an exam the night before, we should be reviewing the material regularly throughout the semester.
Exactly. Regular review helps to reinforce the neural connections associated with that knowledge, making it more likely to stick in the long run.
Okay.
Young suggests using flashcards, spaced repetition software, or even just setting reminders to revisit material at specific intervals.
Right. So it's about creating a system that works for you and then sticking to it.
Absolutely. Consistency is key.
Okay. What about proceduralization? What's that all about?
So proceduralization is all about turning knowledge into automatic habits.
Okay.
It's like learning to ride a bike or tie your shoelaces.
Right.
At first, you have to think about every step.
Yeah.
But eventually, it becomes second nature. You don't even have to think about it.
Right. It just happens.
Exactly. And Young argues that we can proceduralize many skills and knowledge areas by practicing them repeatedly until they become ingrained in our minds and bodies.
Okay, so it's like practice, practice, practice.
Exactly. For example, if you want to master a new language, immerse yourself in it as much as possible. Speak it, listen to it, read it.
Right.
Over time, it will start to feel more and more natural.
Got it. Okay, and then there's overlearning, which kind of sounds counterintuitive. Like, why would you keep practicing something you've already mastered?
Right. It might seem like overkill, but Young makes a compelling case for it. Think of it like a musician practicing a difficult piece. They don't stop once they can play it through without mistakes. They keep practicing to refine their technique, build their stamina, and develop a level of mastery that allows them to perform flawlessly under pressure.
So it's not just about reaching like a basic level of competency.
Right.
It's about pushing beyond that to achieve a level of fluency and automaticity that makes the skill effortless.
Exactly. And Young argues that overlearning can enhance retention as well. It's like reinforcing the neural pathways associated with that knowledge, making it less likely to fade away.
Interesting. Okay, and then finally we have mnemonics.
Yes, mnemonics are memory techniques that use vivid imagery and associations to make information more memorable.
Oh yeah, like acronyms and rhymes.
Exactly. These have been used for centuries, and they can be incredibly effective, especially for learning lists, facts, and sequences.
Right. Okay,
Yeah.
so can you give us an example of a mnemonic?
Sure. So one classic mnemonic is the method of loci, which involves associating information with specific locations in a familiar environment.
Okay, I've heard of that one. So how does it work?
Imagine you're trying to memorize a grocery list. Milk, eggs, bread, cheese. You could mentally place each item in a different room of your house. A gallon of milk on the kitchen counter, a carton of eggs on the dining room table, a loaf of bread in the living room, a block of cheese on the bathroom sink.
Okay.
The more bizarre and vivid the image, the more memorable it will be.
Right.
When you need to recall the list, you simply take a mental walk through your house,
Okay.
and the items will pop into your mind.
That's really cool. It's like creating a mental treasure map for your knowledge.
Exactly. And while mnemonics aren't a substitute for deep understanding,
Right.
they can be a valuable tool for enhancing retention and making information more readily available when you need it.
Got it. Okay, so we've covered retention, which is all about making knowledge stick.
Right.
Now let's move on to intuition.
All right.
This one feels a little bit more mysterious.
Hmm.
Like how can we actually cultivate intuition?
Yeah, it's a good question. So Young starts by highlighting Richard Feynman,
Oh, yeah, the physicist.
the brilliant physicist,
Yeah.
known for his uncanny ability to grasp complex scientific concepts intuitively.
Right.
Feynman had this incredible knack for seeing through complexity and arriving at elegant solutions almost effortlessly.
Yeah, he was like a genius.
He was brilliant. But Young argues that it wasn't just about raw intelligence.
Okay.
Feynman's approach to learning and problem solving played a crucial role in developing his intuition.
Okay, so what can we learn from Feynman? Like, how can we tap into our inner Feynman?
That's the question, right? So Young outlines several of Feynman's key strategies that we can all learn from.
Well, I'm all ears.
So first and foremost, Feynman believed in tackling tough problems head-on. He wouldn't shy away from challenges or give up easily. He saw the struggle as essential for deepening his understanding and honing his intuition.
So it's about embracing the discomfort of not knowing and kind of wrestling with a problem until we find a solution?
Exactly. It's about cultivating a growth mindset and viewing challenges as opportunities for learning and growth.
Okay.
Feynman also emphasized the importance of testing your understanding by trying to explain a concept clearly to someone else.
Oh, that's a good one.
If you can't explain it simply, you probably don't understand it well enough yourself.
Yeah, that's so true. Sometimes I think I understand something and then I try to explain it to somebody else.
Right.
And I realize like, oh, I actually have no idea what I'm talking about.
Exactly. It forces you to really clarify your thinking.
Yeah. Okay, and what else?
And finally, Feynman believed in grounding abstract concepts in concrete examples.
Okay.
He would often create mental models or visual analogies to help him grasp complex ideas.
Right. So it's about making those abstract ideas more tangible and relatable.
Exactly. By grounding abstract concepts in concrete examples, we can make them more understandable, which helps to build our intuition.
Okay, so we've talked about retention and intuition.
Yeah.
The final principle is experimentation.
Right. And this is a theme that runs throughout the book.
Yeah, for sure.
Ultralearners are constantly experimenting, tweaking their approaches, pushing their boundaries, and exploring new possibilities.
So it's not about finding like the one right way to learn.
Right.
It's about being open to trying new things.
Exactly. Young uses the example of Vincent van Gogh,
Oh, yeah.
who didn't start painting until his late 20s and had no formal training.
Wow.
Despite these hurdles, Van Gogh became one of the most celebrated artists in history.
Yeah, he's incredible.
And it wasn't just dumb luck or some latent genius suddenly emerging. Van Gogh's success was fueled by his relentless experimentation. He devoured art books, copied the masters, explored different styles, techniques, and mediums, always seeking to refine his craft and develop his own unique voice.
So it's about embracing the journey of exploration and discovery.
Exactly. And Young outlines 3 key areas to experiment with.
Okay.
Learning resources, techniques, and style.
All right, so break those down for us.
Okay, so experimenting with learning resources means trying out different books, courses, mentors, whatever helps you learn most effectively.
Right, so find what works for you.
Exactly. It's like trying on different hats until you find one that fits just right.
Perfect analogy.
Yeah.
Then there's experimenting with techniques, which involves playing around with different study methods, memory techniques, practice strategies, and seeing what yields the best results.
Exactly. It's like being a scientist in your own learning lab, testing different hypotheses to see what works best.
I love that. And then finally, we have experimenting with style.
Right. And this is about pushing your creative limits, exploring different approaches to your craft, and ultimately developing your own unique voice and perspective.
Yeah, and that's where Van Gogh really stands out, right?
Exactly. His distinctive style emerged from his willingness to break free from convention and explore uncharted artistic territory.
So it's not just about mastering the fundamentals.
Right.
It's about pushing beyond that to develop your own unique style and expression.
Exactly. Young encourages us to embrace experimentation as an essential part of ultralearning.
Right.
It's through this process of trial and error that we discover our strengths, overcome our weaknesses, and push ourselves beyond our perceived limitations.
Okay, I'm loving this. So
Yeah.
we've covered all 9 principles of ultralearning. But now let's talk about like the practical side of things.
Yeah.
How do we actually design and execute an ultralearning project
Right.
that aligns with our goals and our learning style?
Yeah, that's a great question. So Young provides a detailed roadmap in the chapter titled Ultralearning Projects.
Okay.
And he emphasizes that ultralearning is not about rigidly following a prescribed formula,
Right.
but rather about applying these principles in a way that works for you.
So it's about taking those core concepts and customizing them
Exactly.
to fit our own individual needs and goals.
Right. He starts by emphasizing the importance of making a firm commitment to your ultralearning project.
Okay.
This isn't just a casual dabble. It's about dedicating serious time and effort to achieving a specific learning goal.
Right. So it's got to be something you're really passionate about.
Exactly. It's like setting out on a journey.
Right.
You need to pack accordingly and be prepared for the challenges ahead.
For sure. Okay. So we're committed. We've got our goal. What's next?
So Young also stresses the importance of setting a clear timeline for your project. Having a defined start and end date helps to maintain focus and momentum.
Okay. So it's like giving ourselves a deadline.
Exactly. It's like training for a marathon. You need to set a race date to keep yourself motivated and on track.
Love it.
Next. Okay, so next, Young encourages us to create a detailed learning plan. This involves breaking down your overall learning goal into smaller, more manageable steps.
Okay.
He suggests mapping out the key concepts, skills, and knowledge areas you need to master and sequencing them in a logical order.
Right. It's like building a house. You need a blueprint before you start laying bricks.
Exactly. A well-defined plan will keep you on track and prevent you from feeling overwhelmed.
Okay. What about actually finding the time to learn? Life can get pretty busy.
That's true. And Young emphasizes the importance of scheduling dedicated learning time,
Okay.
just as you would schedule any other important appointment or commitment.
So it's about making learning a priority.
Exactly. Block out specific time slots in your calendar and treat them as non-negotiable.
Right. Even if it's just 30 minutes a day, that consistency will pay off.
Okay, so it's about making learning a habit.
Exactly. And Young also provides tips for setting up a conducive learning environment, minimizing distractions, and maximizing focus.
Right, like finding a quiet space or using noise-canceling headphones.
Exactly. It's about creating a space where you can fully immerse yourself in the learning process.
Okay, so we've got our goal, we've got our timeline, we've got our learning plan, we've got our dedicated learning time. We're ready to roll.
You got it. And as you're working through your ultralearning project, Young emphasizes the importance of regularly reviewing your progress, making adjustments as needed, and celebrating your accomplishments along the way.
Right, so it's not just about like setting it and forgetting it.
Exactly. It's about staying flexible, adapting to challenges, and maintaining motivation throughout the journey.
Okay.
Ultralearning is not always easy, but the rewards are well worth the effort.
I believe that. Okay, we've covered a lot of ground today. But before we wrap up, I'd love to hear your thoughts on why ultralearning matters in today's world.
Yeah, that's a great question.
Like, why should our listeners even care about this stuff?
So Young addresses this head-on in the chapter titled, Why Ultralearning Matters.
Okay.
He starts by painting a stark picture of the economic landscape, citing economist Tyler Cowen's book, Average is Over.
Okay, I've heard of that one.
Cowen argues that in today's globalized and technology-driven world, being average is no longer enough.
Right.
The middle class is shrinking, automation is replacing jobs, and the competition for high-skilled work is fiercer than ever.
Yeah, it's a tough world out there.
It is. And Young argues that ultralearning is the key to achieving this level of exceptionalism that's needed to thrive in this environment.
Okay, so it's not enough to just have a degree or to be competent in our field.
Right.
We need to be exceptional to stand out from the crowd.
Exactly. And ultralearning is about developing the skills and knowledge that are in high demand, but it's also about cultivating a growth mindset, a willingness to learn and adapt, and a relentless pursuit of mastery. These are the qualities that will set you apart in a world where average is no longer enough.
Okay, that makes sense. He also talks about the limitations of traditional education, right?
He does.
Like how it often fails to keep pace with the rapid changes in the job market.
That's right. Degrees and certifications are still important,
Yeah.
but they're not enough. Employers are looking for individuals who have the specific skills and knowledge they need, who are adaptable and eager to learn, and who can contribute from day one.
So ultralearning is a way to bridge that gap
Right.
between what's taught in school and what's demanded in the real world.
Exactly. It gives you the tools to become a self-directed learner,
Right.
to identify the skills that are in high demand and to master them through focused effort and effective strategies.
And it's not just about the economic benefits either, right?
No, not at all. Young emphasizes the personal growth potential of ultralearning as well.
Yeah, like what does that look like?
Yeah. It's about proving to yourself that you're capable of more than you think, pushing your boundaries and discovering hidden talents and passions.
Right.
It's about embracing the joy of learning and becoming a more well-rounded and capable individual.
I love that. So it's not just about getting ahead in your career.
Yeah,
It's about becoming the best version of yourself.
exactly. And Young concludes the book by encouraging readers to embrace the ultra-learning mindset and to apply these 9 principles to their own lives,
Okay.
whether it's for professional advancement, personal growth, or simply the pursuit of knowledge.
Right. So there's really something in it for everyone.
There is. He emphasizes that ultra-learning is not a one-size-fits-all approach,
Right?
but rather a set of principles and techniques that can be adapted to a wide range of learning goals and individual learning styles.
Right. So it's about finding what works for you.
Exactly. He encourages readers to experiment, to find what works best for them, and to embrace the journey of lifelong learning.
Awesome. So it's about being curious,
Yeah.
trying new things, and never stopping exploring.
It's been a great discussion so far.
Yeah, it really has. We've explored those 9 principles, the why and the how, and now I think it's time to get inspired by some real-world examples, see how these principles have actually been used by people to achieve some pretty incredible things.
Yeah, definitely. I think stories are so powerful, they can really bring those concepts to life.
Right. So one story that always blows my mind is Roger Craig, the Jeopardy champion,
Oh, yeah.
who basically used this data-driven approach to master trivia.
He's a legend.
He even beat IBM's Watson supercomputer, in a practice round. It's crazy.
I know, right?
So, his story really highlights that ultra-learning is about strategy and effort.
Yeah, for sure. He didn't just rely on his natural intelligence.
Right.
He actually put in the work. He meticulously analyzed past Jeopardy questions, he identified patterns and categories, and then he developed this whole system for efficiently learning and recalling vast amounts of information.
Yeah, he even, built his own software to, simulate Jeopardy games and practice his buzzer speed. That's some serious dedication.
Yeah, totally. So it shows that ultralearning is not about shortcuts. It's about finding those most effective methods and really putting in the effort.
Right, right. Okay, and then another story that I love is Eric Barone, the creator of that hit indie game, Stardew Valley.
Oh, yeah, that's a great one.
I think it's just so inspiring because it proves that you don't need a fancy degree or a ton of resources to achieve incredible things.
Absolutely. He went from working minimum wage jobs to becoming a millionaire
Crazy.
by teaching himself everything he needed to know about game design, programming, pixel art, music composition, storytelling, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah. It's a perfect example of that idea of breaking down a seemingly impossible goal into these smaller, manageable steps.
Exactly.
And then eventually, all those individual skills kind of come together and you can create something really extraordinary.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note that, he didn't just learn these skills to a basic level, he mastered them.
Right.
To a level that allowed him to create a game that, millions of people love and enjoy.
Right, exactly. Okay, so those are just 2 examples. And of course, there are countless others in the book. But, one thing that Young also acknowledges is that, it's not always smooth sailing, right? There are challenges and setbacks that ultra learners often face.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, ultralearning isn't some kind of magic bullet.
Right.
It requires grit, it requires perseverance, and it requires a willingness to push through those moments of discomfort and frustration.
Yeah. There can be times when you hit a wall where you feel like giving up.
For sure.
But the ultra learners who succeed, I think, are the ones who develop resilience and adaptability.
Definitely.
Right. They view those challenges as opportunities for growth. And they're constantly kind of refining their approaches based on the feedback and the experiences that they have.
Yeah, I think that's a great point.
Okay. So we've talked about the 9 principles. We've seen how they can be applied in these real world situations. So for our listeners who are, ready to kind of embark on their own ultra learning journey, what are some key takeaways, things that they should keep in mind?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think first and foremost, it's important to remember that ultralearning is a mindset.
Okay.
Right? It's about taking ownership of your education, and it's about being proactive in seeking out the most effective ways to learn. So it's not about waiting for someone to teach you something. It's about setting those ambitious goals and being relentless in your pursuit of knowledge.
Right. And it's about being, open to experimentation. Don't be afraid to try new things, to step outside of your comfort zone.
Absolutely.
And to learn from those mistakes. And I think most importantly, it's about, believing in yourself and your ability to learn.
Yeah, I think that's crucial.
All right. Ultralearning is not just for, geniuses or prodigies. It's for anyone who's willing to put in the work and to embrace the challenge and to never stop growing. So there's one thing I want our listeners to take away from this deep dive. It's this. You are capable of more than you think.
Yeah, that's so true.
Ultralearning is a powerful tool that can help you achieve your goals and become, the best version of yourself.
Definitely.
So what are you waiting for? Pick a skill you're passionate about, set an ambitious goal, and start your ultralearning journey today.
And don't forget to tune in next week for another deep dive into a fascinating book or topic.
Until then, happy learning.